Hey guys, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be talking about top 10 things I wish I knew before I got into the freelance industry. For those who don't know me, I am Manoel, Bolutife, Akure. I am a freelance graphic designer, filmmaker, and photographer from Bath. I'm also an artist. Shameless plug. That's my EP right there. Go get it. That's stupid. Tip number one. I think one of the most important things to have learned on my journey so far is how important it is to write a contract, to have a contract to be able to present for a client. It makes the work move so much smoother. It means that you know what you need to get done. The client knows what they need to receive from you at the end of a certain time period that's given on the contract. And it just makes it so much easier because you've both signed the contract about what it is you're going to deliver and what it is they're going to get. If you don't know how to work with all the contract things, there's so many resources out there. Search up on YouTube, read up articles, check blog posts about this stuff. So much out there. A place you could start is going online and searching up templates for contracts, or being able to find a sample one where you could have a look at the different things that you could pop on there, or maybe ask a parent or ask a teacher or find any other freelancer out there that could answer some questions about it. Tip number two, learn to talk to people. I can't stress enough how important this is. Personally, I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk to people. There are a few things more important than who you know in this industry. That's why you would find trash artists doing very well in this industry, because they just know the right people. So make sure to converse with people, build relationships, get to know freelancers in your area, get to know organizations in your area. Even if you're not actually doing work for them, just be able to connect with them. And maybe they might be the reason you're able to get the next big job that you get in, or be able to get the next big break. Tip number three, do not rely too heavily on social media. I'm not saying neglect social media. For some people, that works for you. For others, it doesn't. So what's important is to make sure you find what works for you and invest your time in that. If you're like me and you get most of your work from word of mouth or personal interactions, learn to start building your network. And even if you're not like me, build your network. Make sure to go out there, network with people, get to know people. And I guess that kind of ties in with the second point. Tip number four, do not take criticism personally. It's so important in this job. You are going to get a lot of criticism. It's so important not to take criticism personally, because it just makes you sad and not want to do the job really. And it just makes you look unprofessional. And it's probably one of the best ways to learn. Tip number five, shoot for free. I think this is very important, at least at the start. And even sometimes in between, it's important to know when you should shoot for free, because there's so many opportunities that I've got where people are not able to pay me the amount that I'm worth. People are not able to offer me the amount that I would quite like, or even anything at all. But what they do offer is worth a lot more money than money can buy. What? The point is, sometimes doing a specific job, whether free or for cheap, might be introducing you to other opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to get to. Personally, I have had one experience or one client that didn't really pay me much. If anything, they just paid for my transportation to the venue to just shoot a bunch of times, a couple times a month. And I just kept doing that. Combining that with talking to people was being able to build networks and build connections with artists and people in different areas that I would otherwise not have been able to get into. It gave me the opportunity to work with organizations that I otherwise would have had to try harder to get to work with. So it's kind of crazy to think that no money could equal more money later on. Tip number six, don't shoot for free. I guess it sounds weird me saying don't shoot for free right after saying shoot for free, but hear me out. I think it's important to shoot for free now and then, but make sure to know the time and the place for a lot of these things, because there's a lot of people out there that have money but just want to try and get it as cheap as possible. That's kind of what everyone's trying to do, to be honest. But make sure to know your worth and charge that. All creatives kind of relate with the idea of not knowing their worth and not feeling justified in charging that worth. Calculate the time it takes you to get to a job, calculate the time it takes you at the job, calculate the time it takes you getting from the job. All these things are important to take into consideration when it comes to how much should I charge for this job. And it's also important to get a rough idea of how much you would charge someone, as far as a day rate or as far as just a general work day, which is usually 5-6 hours of work, and being able to have that at your fingertips. So if a potential client asks you for that information, you could just pull that out quickly and send it to them and be like, this is on average how much I charge as a day rate, but usually it's dependent on what equipment I'm taking there, what type of job it is, how intensive it is, all these other questions. But make sure to have those things on lock. Tip number 7, have a separate bank account for your business stuff. And I guess that seems like such a no-brainer to most people, but it's so easy as a self-employed person to fall into the trap of spending with your personal account and not accounting for it with your business account, or kind of those things becoming interwoven in a sense. But it's so important to do that, especially further down the line when it comes to taxes and dealing with numbers and all that stuff, especially if you do have an accountant, because then it would make everything more complicated. And it's so important to be able to distinguish between the income you have that's personal income versus the business income, the expenses you have that's personal versus business. Tip number 8, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I guess a lot of people say this in so many spaces, but you can't learn without making mistakes. So don't be afraid to just take the leap of faith in areas that you're not sure of. Make sure to prepare as much as you can to the best of your knowledge, ask questions to the best of your ability, but allow yourself to make mistakes. It's important to make all the mistakes you can while you can afford to make mistakes, because the older you get and the more responsibilities you get, the harder it is to be able to have leeway for mistakes, and you want to learn as much as you can at the start. So cut yourself some slack. Tip number 9, save. It is so important to save. I guess it goes without saying, like, everyone gets it, but not everyone does it. It's so important to tuck money away for a rainy day, because you're going to have times like now, the coronavirus time period, where all of us are struggling and you might need that money to be able to rely on, especially when you're not able to get jobs. It's important to always have something you can fall back on in that sense. Tip number 10, jump at as much opportunities as you can. Shoot everywhere. Photography wise, shoot everywhere. Film wise, shoot everywhere. Try and make as much content as you can, because most people say practice makes perfect. I don't think it makes perfect. I think it makes permanent. It makes what you learn and what you do more permanent and second nature to you. So it's important to just constantly keep doing what you do. Sometimes we just want to shoot because we love it and not because we want to make money from it. And that's one of the most important parts of art, is doing something you love. So you don't want to lose that. You want to make sure you keep shooting, keep loving the art, and money is just a bonus when you live life like that. So I think that's super important. Another thing I think would be cool to add is, as an aspiring filmmaker or photographer, it might be very daunting to kind of get into this industry. You don't know where to start. You don't know if you have the right equipment. For starters, don't fuss too much about the equipment to begin with, because like they say, a bad workman blames his tools. So what you want to do is just learn as much as you want about how to use these tools, about how to use them to the best of their ability and yours. So as a starter film camera, I think get a Sony camcorder. It's fairly cheap nowadays, might be slightly above your range. You might want to get a later model of it that would be cheaper, or a second-hand version. It's very important to get stuff like that down. Like for instance, the Sony a6300, it gives you a lot of room to grow. So like till today, I'm still learning a lot about the camera, and just constantly building on that. And as photography gear, you can start off with something like a Canon 600D, which is funny because I still use my Canon 600D till today. And it's so important to not put all your faith in the ability of the camera and the spec and everything, because it's easy to just want the newest stuff. But it's so important to learn to use what you can use and what you have with you. Like the saying goes, the best camera you have is the one you have with you, for whatever that's worth. And I also think it's important during this period to remain researching, because during periods like now where the coronavirus is hit and a lot of businesses are being hit, it's important to keep your eyes and your ears open. You need to catch every opportunity that flies in front of you. You can't afford to let it go. Like a lot of the successful businesses and businessmen out there, one thing they say is they don't lose out on opportunities, and neither should you. So make sure you are conversing with organizations around you. You are getting in contact with organizations like Youth Music and different little organizations around your sphere in your local area. Just get to know them, or email people. Just find out. And like I was saying earlier, talk to people is so important. You don't know how far that's going to take you. Sometimes that's the difference between your big break and not your big break. I hope this video has been helpful to you in a way. I hope I haven't just waffled for ages. And if this has helped you, reach out. Let me know. Would love to see your work. Would love to see how it's influenced the way you approach this stuff. Yeah. So, deuces.